How are you doing?
I'm good, man. How about you?
Good. Thanks for willing to do this.
Yeah, of course, man. Not a problem at all.
Is this like, well, from what I could see, this is only like the second interview that you've done.
Yeah, exactly. I was actually just about to say that. Another guy interviewed me like about a year ago, and it was like a more like a podcast or a style thing. We had so many issues with that though, because I had computer issues and this, that. So it was a time.
Okay. I read up on how you got started and everything, but for those who don't know, if you would start from the beginning and say how you wanted to pursue voiceover.
Yeah, totally, dude. So I'm like a really good case of a fan turned professional. I grew up with like anime, video games, a lot of the nerdy stuff that's mainstream now, which I'm very thankful for because not as many people get bullied over it. And when I was in high school, I found out that you could like do that sort of stuff online because I'd played like RPGs growing up and all the like the big name voice actors of today, like the Johnny Young Bosch's, Christopher Sabat's, people like them were there in my childhood and really helped me get through a lot of it because I didn't have the best upbringing. And so when I was in high school, I decided, hey, this would be really cool to do because I'd always say like all the crazy tech names from all my video games in my bedroom and just, play around. And I want to do the same thing that those guys did for me, but with other people. And here I am now, I'm 24 and very thankful for all the work I have. And yeah, just living the dream as best I can.
And you're originally from Florida, right?
Yes, for the most part. I was born in Massachusetts, then I moved to Florida to live with my dad when I was like 12, and then I ended up in Texas about almost 4 years ago.
Was there ever any aspiration to move to LA or was it Texas?
Yeah, yeah, there's definitely the want to move to LA, which I'm thinking of doing very soon myself, probably within the next year. But when I was debating where I wanted to move to, whether it was LA or Texas from Florida, of course I would have loved to have gone to Texas, not Texas, sorry, to LA, but I didn't have as many connections out there. I didn't have any friends that were really gonna help me out, and I didn't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
I moved from Florida to Texas with like $1,000 to my name, which is something that I'd never recommend anybody to do. $1,000 to my name, period, and like over like $2,000 worth of credit card debt. So like, don't do what I did. Be
Mm.
prepared. But I was very lucky that I had some people that were willing to help me out, give me a place to stay, and I slept on a couch for a year because I didn't have any furniture. I was able to fit everything into like my 2004 Ford Escape, just drive across the country from Florida to Texas, to your Dallas. There's always the want to go to LA for bigger stuff because there's so many cool things out there and a lot of cool people and a lot
Right.
of friends out there too.
So what was the first any sort of anime project that you became involved with then?
So the very, very first one was when I was 19. I had taken some classes with Sonny Strait,
Yeah.
who people probably know as like Krillin and a bunch of other really great characters. I'd been taking classes with him, and before I'd even uh, settled that I wanted to move to Texas, I came out for a little mini vacation. I came out to go to Anime Fest 2017. It was my kind of trip to get a feel for the area, fall in love with it. And I met up with Sonny, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" I'm like, "Yeah, no, I'm just here for the con. You're here. I figured I'd say hi." And he was very kind to give me a quick tour of the old Funimation building. And then he also got me into the booth with Kristen McGuire on a show called Gamers. And I did my very first bit in, I think it was episode 6. Yeah, in episode 6. And that was the first ever bit of anime work I ever did. But my first role that I booked professionally that was completely on my own and wasn't just like, hey, this guy's good, put him in the booth spontaneously, was on a show called This Boy Suffers from Crystallization.
Yeah.
That was the very first show I ever booked of my own accord and the very first lead I ever booked on my own accord. And it's kind of funny because when I went in to do my bit for Gamers, Marissa Lenti, who was my director for Crystallization, was actually the actor that we had interrupted so I could do my bit. And
No.
so over a year later, she ended up casting me in in Crystallization, and I brought that up. I was like, "Yeah, I know. Actually, like a year ago, I interrupted your session." She's like, "No wonder you looked familiar." So it just kind of like a big circle of like, "Hey, you saw this person like a year ago. Now you're working with them a year later."
I was actually going to bring that up because I haven't got to talk to too many other VAs that have done Yaoi series. Was there a process that you got to get yourself into that kind of headspace?
So the really good thing about the This Boy series is that there's never really a forefront of making it like, oh my God, these people are gay. Like they don't exacerbate the fact that just because somebody might be like homosexual or gay, or however you identify, they don't exacerbate that as like a problem that makes them who they are.
Yeah.
Like it's at the forefront of their character. Like, oh my God, you look at this person, you just think they're gay. No, like just because somebody's homosexual doesn't mean that that's their entire character. And what Crystallization is really about is about social anxiety and coming to terms and dealing with that and learning to grow the courage to reach out to other people. And for the other main character's perspective, learning to be more open and willing to let people into your life. And so the whole relationship between Tomomi and his teacher ended up becoming that. A lot of people get kind of turned off when they realize it's a student-teacher relationship, but they don't do anything until after graduation. So it's more so about the journey, which is the really good part. So really entering into Tomomi's space, who's, again, probably should have said was the character I played in that show. Getting into his headspace was on the easier side, just because I was a loner. I had a lot of social anxiety, and a lot of my emotions back then were pretty true, because I was 20. It was my first big thing. And I was a nervous wreck. If you look at any of the behind the scenes stuff, you'll see Damon Mills, who played opposite of me, be a lot more like loose and in the moment, because he's worked with Marissa and has more experience. And then for the sister show, this boy is a professional wizard. Alejandro, Saab, and Howard are just going crazy, and they're just having a grand old time. And I walk into the booth and I am so stiff. I close the door behind me and I'm like, let's do this. So there wasn't a lot to make more behind the scenes stuff with me that was like funny, because I was like, oh, I want to do this thing, and I would just scream.
Yeah.
So but yeah, no, I was very, very thankful for the opportunity. Marissa was a great teacher and great director, and still is. And overall, that show is very special to me, and I know it's important to some other people too. But I was just very thankful to have a really, really nice little project to kind of wean me into the bigger part of the industry.
And with working on that show, was that also how you became friends with Damon and the other people that you mentioned?
Pretty much, actually. That's how I got introduced to Damon, was through that show. That was the first time I worked with Marissa. I'd known Alejandro for like a little bit of time prior, and we became better friends as time went on. But that was how I got to meet Damon. I got to know Howard a little bit better over time. Just the entire crew over at Sound Cadence, we became closer and became friends, and everybody over there is phenomenal. I love all of them. They're some of the hardest working people around. So that was like my kind of intro to Damon, especially since we had to do commentary in the episode, and it was him, Marissa, and I, we all had to fit into like a nice little booth. It was nice. We got to go out to lunch and that afterwards. So yeah, it was a good project to meet some good people on too.
Since you've done a lot of incidental voices on several series, is there like one that stands out to you the most?
Oh gosh, that's actually a really good question, because sometimes I forget some of the stuff I work on. I mean, there are a lot of good shows out there that people should watch. Since just sometimes when you do incidental voices, you're just kind of tossed around. Back into before the pandemic happened, you'd go into Funimation, you'd have like a wall session, which is the bits and background voices session, and you'd sometimes would finish early, and so the director would be like, okay, let me go ask some of the other directors who are in studio right now if they need you guys for any bits to be filled. There was one show that I worked on, it's called Robihachi. I did a couple of bits for that. That was a fun little show to do bits for. Another fun one. Before I was in One Piece, I did bits for One Piece. So yeah. I recommend people go watch One Piece, because it's just actually really good. Oh, here's another good one. I did like a bunch of bits for a movie called City Hunter Shinjuku Private Eyes that Sound Cadence did. I would recommend people go watch that, because everybody in that's great. And that was one of the most fun Wallow sessions I have ever had.
And I would also guess too, on the topic of One Piece, that Pika is the case where you had to alter your voice the most so far.
Kind of. So it was really funny how I ended up getting cast as Pika. I just got a text from the talent coordinator at Funimation, and she was like, "Hey, can you come in to record for Mike McFarlane, one of the directors on One Piece, for like about 2 hours?" And I was like, "Yeah, totally. That time's fine." And this was before I had my remote set up, so I went into studio with the COVID protocols and everything, which were phenomenal protocols, very, very well done protocols. And I had no clue what I was doing. I was booked for 2 hours, no clue what I was doing. I walk into the booth, and Mike, who's like remoted in, and as is the engineer, they pretty much were like, okay, so we got a really fun character for you here. And Mike shows me what he looks like at first. And he's like, but just listen, there's a reason why. And then I hear Pika, who has this entirely high squeaky voice, and I just started dying of laughter. So I just looked at that and we were like, okay, cool. And so we kind of workshopped it a little bit. Workshop it, I say, but it was the first take that worked to find the voice. We did a take to be like, okay, this is the kind of voice we want to do. So we did a couple passes at some of the cues, and we kind of came up with Pika's voice, which is the internet's called like a bad Marge Simpson.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that could have done Pika, but I was very grateful to Mike because he wanted to get somebody who naturally had a higher register like me to kind of do that voice. And so, and thus Pika's English voice was born, and one of my favorite roles I've done because it's so funny.
Yeah. Would your second lead would have been Shuichi?
Shuichi was like my second big lead in a show. Because my first super big like main character was Rito in To Love Ru,
Right.
which I'm super thankful for to have had that opportunity. But Shuichi was like my second leading man pretty much. And oh my God, was Gleipnir a show that I wanted to be in. I had actually started watching it earlier that year. I was like, this would be an interesting show to be in. I really like it. The main character seems like a really fun guy to play around with, and I never finished it. I only watched like the first 2, maybe 3 episodes. Then like months later, I get the sides for it, and I'm like, oh my God, I know this show. I want to be in this show. And so I went to go record my auditions, and I spent way too long on them because I auditioned for a lot of characters. I auditioned for Shuichi. I auditioned for Kyle Gnessi's character, the alien. I auditioned for Susie's character, Susie Young's character. I can't remember his name. He's got a really cool power though. For whatchamacallit, for Damon's character, and I think I'd also auditioned for Casey's character, Isao. And then like about a week passes, and I learned that I booked Shuichi, and I was like, yes, because I really wanted to be in that show in some capacity, and I got to book the lead. And I am so thankful that I got to work with Amberly Connors on that show because we made it as good as we could. It was such a good collaborative process. And to go on that journey with Shuichi was so fulfilling. I haven't had the opportunity to take a character from like a more nervous place and just see him descend more and more and more into darkness like that. And to like, I guess a little bit more edginess too, in a sort of like really dark, like hopeful sort of sense too. So that show was so much fun, especially in episode 7, where I got to go like full rager, and I got to be like nothing but pure anger. And we had a really cool like Patara-esque fusion moment with Michelle Marie's character. That was like one of my favorite moments to record. And I'm so proud of that show's work. The entire cast was freaking phenomenal, and getting to work off of Brittany Karbowski as Claire was nothing but a treat. Like Amber put together an amazing cast, and like everybody killed it. And I'm hoping that we get a second season at some point. I really, really, really am, because that show is just so much fun to work on, especially like both from like as a fan of the series now, and also as an actor working on it, working with the people that we are in the source material itself, which I also recommend people go watch. It is a little bit on the darker side, and it's definitely more like a TVMA sort of deal, but it's really good.
Yeah, I was actually I still actively read it too, like way before it had an anime adaptation.
Yo, hype, dude. I actually after we finished recording, I went out to my local bookstore and I bought like all 7 volumes of the manga that I could.
Okay.
And I'm caught up. I'm waiting on volume 10 to come out, but I have volume 9 sitting over there on my bookshelf.
And do you think that Shuichi is the most darkest emotionally involved you've had to get into for a role so far?
Yeah, I would definitely have to say that, especially with Shuichi, since his whole dichotomy of his character is that he has a huge lapse in his memories and eventually comes to learn that part of his life's been a lie. Like everything's not as it seems. Like he goes from like a more naive, nervous point to being like, I'm going to get what I want and I'm going to figure out how, while still retaining some sort of humanity. Like he's descending slowly into a more angry mess of emotions because of what he wants to do. But he also just wants normalcy again. He wants this to be over, but he has to do things that he never thought he would have to do before. Like he's had to kill people, and he comes to terms with that. He's like, everything's going to be okay now because I know what I have to do. And so Shuichi goes to dark places that I've not had the opportunity to with other characters yet. But Shuichi's definitely the most. I feel like it's the character that goes on the most wild emotional journey that I've done so far.
And what aspects of him do you think you can personally relate to the most?
That's actually a little hard because Shuichi's got such a weird life. I definitely like for the most part, like in his good nature, I definitely relate to that. Like he's usually like a good being, right? He's like a good being, and unfortunately, circumstances caused them to become, like more dark. But he's still like determined and like somewhat optimistic and hopeful, albeit like having to do the dark things that nobody wants to do, right? So like I kind of was able to step into his shoes pretty easily because he has to put up face for a lot of people, and I used to do that a lot, especially around some of his classmates. He has to act like, yeah, everything's fine, everything's totally fine, like nothing's wrong. Like he acts really cool, or like we made him sound extra cool around God, what was her name? It was Anthony Wynn's character, the short little pink-haired girl. We ended up making Shuichi sound a lot more cool around her, whether it was intentional or not. That's just kind of how it came out. Like, so he like puts up different like personas around different people because it's his way of both coping and his way of communicating to them. Like, hey, I'm trying to ask something that you might not understand now, but your answer will actually matter to me. Like Shuichi definitely having multiple sides to him and being like multifaceted is something that I feel like a lot of people could step into, but something I really personally relate to about him is kind of like his fighting between like what he thinks is like morally right and like having to come to terms with what he has to do. Like it's such a powerful thing to have to deal with, especially as you see early on. He's like, I don't want to do this, but I have to.
Right.
Something that I feel like is a very powerful message, not just for viewers, but also like for me. So there's a lot of Shuichi that I kind of am able to pick from to put into myself to help present him to the people.
This is probably obvious too, but do you have the most affinity with Rito?
Yeah, probably. The thing is with Rito and the entirety of like early to Love Ru was that it's just a big allegory for puberty. Yeah. Like it's weird and it's wacky and it's zany, and you're gonna have multiple interests in girls because you don't understand how love works. And like Rito, we made Rito a lot more like self-deprecating in the first season's dub. And later on too in places, but the first season especially. Rito was one of the characters I was super like, that's not the right phrasing saying that. I was really able to step into him super easily, especially because he squeaks a lot and has lots of voice cracks, and I do that on a daily basis. And so we just harnessed that energy and put it into the dub, and it was so much fun. Like the 80 plus hours I spent recording that first season with David Wald are some of the most fond memories I have of working in this industry, because it was filled with nothing but laughter, genuine, great tutelage since I was still pretty green at the time, and just really fun times, especially since Rito is so zany, goes from like from one high to this low to this low to this high, and he's just all over the place, and it's so much fun to get to play around with comedy like that while also dispersing in some serious moments and like some actual genuine growth too. So Rito is definitely the one that I can relate to the most in terms of like his actual struggle, not the fact that he's got to choose between like 10 different girls, but his actual like intended character growth before the show became what it is now.
And so when you got the role of Magic in the Orphan reboot, were you aware of the series before?
Yeah, I had been aware that the series had existed. I was never like invested in it at all. I had been like made aware of like the Orphan video game that came out on PS2 like years and years ago. I briefly remember seeing that when I was younger. I like had known of the franchise. I knew nothing about it. So when Jerry Jewell cast me as Magic, I was like, oh, cool. I'm that kid.
Yeah.
And it's a really cool show. It's nothing like amazing, but it's really cool to be a part of like a legacy franchise too, like that. With maybe more on the horizon. Who knows? Because I know there's a lot more cool stuff for Magic. But he goes on a nice little journey too, especially in the second season, where he gets a little bit more time to shine. There's a moment in the second season where Magic actually has an argument with Orphan. And I was like, oh, this is what I want. This is what I want from Magic. Give me the angst. Give me like that teenager angst and anger. Let me just like belt out some frustrations, please. Let me yell at David Matranga. But Magic's fun. Magic was fun. I didn't really know where the show was going with them. I didn't really know where the show was going for the most part. It'd be really cool to be a part of a legacy franchise like that.
Mhm. And so, is there any kind of interesting story with becoming Udo in AOT?
There kind of was. Again, another moment where I just got a text from the talent coordinator saying, "Hey, can you come in for like 2 hours?" And I was like, "For Attack on Titan," and I was like, "Sure." The funny thing was, I didn't have much knowledge of like current Attack on Titan at the time. I didn't know where the series went. I didn't know what was going on beyond like season 2, part 1, basically. Like that's as far as I knew. I knew that like small spoilers for Attack on Titan, like not that anybody's behind on it. I knew that Ymir was a Titan. I knew Steiner and Reina and Bertold were like the Colossal and the Armored Titan. I knew that much. That's all I knew. I knew that like their fight that they had. I knew Eren got kidnapped. This, that. That's all I knew. And so I literally had said, I think that day, I'll probably never be an Attack on Titan because there's like no kids in it. Because, you know, like that's where I most comfortably sit. I can go a little bit older, but that's where I sit most comfortably. And then literally like a few hours later, I got a text, "Hey, can you come in for 2 hours of Attack on Titan?" And I was like, okay, then. And I was really excited because Attack on Titan is such a cool show to be a part of. I had no idea who I was playing. I didn't do a whole lot of research, this, that. I just kind of went in. And then Mike was like, "Yeah, you're going to play this kid named Udo. Really cool." And then just went to town with him. And Udo was really fun to play because he was a little bit more of just like the straight man a little bit, who also had like his frustrations and anger at the world too, and the world he was put in. And he was just he was a nice change of pace to play. Like the play around in the world of Attack on Titan was just also a great pleasure to do. And Udo was a really fun time before he died. Small spoilers. He doesn't have a last name. Attack on Titan characters that don't have a last name don't live that long. It's a proven fact. But here's a fun fact. So, and sorry for spoilers, but when Udo dies, I think in episode 6 or 7, in the Japanese, there's no sound for when because he gets trampled by an entire crowd. There's no sounds that the Japanese left in for when he gets trampled. So we added some in. And I was very grateful that we did.
Yeah.
Because I kind of like looked ahead a little bit. It's like, okay, I know he dies, but I want to see how he dies. And then after I announced, my friends were like, "Yeah, he gets trampled to death, not by a Titan, but by people." I'm like, that's kind of metal. So I like checked ahead to see what happens. And I was like, "Oh, there's no sounds there. I hope we can add sounds." And then Mike was like, "Yeah, let's add some sounds." And then we had some really guttural sounds. He's like, "Oh God, that's disgusting. That's perfect." So I was very thankful for that. But just getting to play in the world of Attack on Titan was also really cool.
Was that the only case so far where you've had to record a pretty heavy death scene for a character?
Pretty much, yeah. I outside of like any bits and like like that like just get blown away or like die or something like that in a show that's just really fast. That's like the only one where it's kind of like I actually had to do like, oh, my character's dead. He's not coming back. He's just dead. And actually do like a grand extravagant death scream, or not death scream, but death scene like that. As extravagant as getting trampled by a crowd of people can be.
Yeah. I haven't got to talk to too many people who are in Westgate Park yet. What was your experience?
Oh, that's right. I forgot I was in that show for a minute. So that show was really interesting to work on. I didn't have an insane amount of knowledge about the property. And my character Tomomi doesn't really. He kind of plays a side role for the most part. Like he's important, but not super important until like the last 2 episodes, pretty much. He was fun because like in the audition sides for him that I got, it was literally just like he's a good bean. That was quite literally in the audition sides. He's a good boy or a good bean. And so I just read him and I was like, yeah, cool. And I got cast and I was like, oh, dope. And so I didn't know where he was going with his character or the story I had in store for him. But come towards the end of the series, it turns out he's not such a good bean after all. And I was like, oh, I get to play a twist villain. Ooh. And so I got to do like my first evil laugh with him. And I got to like change him up a little bit vocally when he kind of has his big reveal. And so he was fun. He was fun to kind of, especially knowing that like he kind of becomes the villain. Well, I'm learning that he becomes the villain. So, but Ikebukuro Westgate Park is a pretty fun show. It's not like groundbreaking, but it's a fun show. It's a fun little drama.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't overstay its welcome either. It's a nice condensed like 12, 13 episode show. And if people want something that's a little bit more kind of relaxed a little bit, that's not like super high shonen actiony stuff with like, you know, beams of energy and stuff like that, I think it's worth the watch. And it's also got a really great and stacked cast in there too.
And on that same topic of a darker role, and it's probably the most recent that you've been a part of. It's cool to see you be a Hoshi, Sonny Boy.
Oh yes, 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 yes. Oh man, Hoshi was I was so happy I booked Hoshi. Not only was I super excited to work with Alexis Tipton, because Alexis is a sweetheart and one of the best people to work with, in my opinion. I just really wanted to play somebody that like was a lot more meticulous. And so getting to play around with Hoshi was super, super rewarding because I had to find different ways to kind of be creepy while not sounding like, without trying to sound creepy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Hoshi has a nice little character arc too, because at around episode 7, all the other characters besides like 5 kind of go off and do their own thing. Like they're like, hey, we're gonna just leave now, bye-bye. And so getting to kind of see Hoshi's little journey and his little character arc kind of come to fruition, where he is like, you know, he's kind of manipulative. He's kind of got like a you know, I wouldn't say a Napoleon complex, but like a, you know, a control complex. He's definitely like a power freak in some respects, because he's like, yeah, don't worry, I'll think of something. After all, I'm the leader, or like someone needs to guide these sheep, some stuff along there. And so the first episode especially was probably my favorite to record, especially when he's talking to Cap about like having him like take down all that he's saying to send out a wide text to the entire student, like the entire student body that's there. They're like, yeah, people are abusing their powers. It's just such a small power move, right? And he was so much fun to play. And at the end, he just kind of realizes like, yeah, no, I just really care about my friends and I want what's best for them. And the way I was going about things might not have been great, but you know, now I know that I should have been listening to other people instead of just listening to this voice in my head that I can't hear anymore because I'm not useful anymore. So he goes on a nice little character arc, and it's nice to kind of see him go from being very like manipulative to being like, yeah, I just really wanted to help my friends. And now I realize that now that this is done and this is happening, you know, I should have listened to you, and I'm sorry about that. So like he goes on a nice journey, but I loved getting to play him when he was creepy.
Do you have a personal preference for playing more dark opposed to light roles?
I mean, I'm never going to say yes or no, just because work is work and I love acting, but getting to play the villainous people are always more fun because there's more to play with there. But I also love playing your traditional hero too. I just love the acting, love getting to play, because it's because acting is playing, and like a lot of people say it's like playing pretend, which is true. You're supposed to be having fun with it, and it's also like a great learning experience, especially when you dip into a role that you haven't gotten to play around with before. Case in point, like Tomomi in IWGP. No clue that he was going to become a twist villain. So when that happened, I had to be like, oh dang, I gotta sound like I hate people. Which that's not me, and I haven't really had that opportunity to like play around with like somebody's like, yeah, I hate people, everybody here can burn sort of mentality, versus like, you know, Rito, who's just like, girls. So I playing like the darker side of the story is always more fun, just because there's a lot more facets you can play with. Playing a villain can be fun, but also there's benefits to playing a hero and playing, like, you know, as I said, the white side, like the, you know, light versus dark. And then there's always the gray, the morally gray characters too, that are always fun to play. But personally, I kind of like playing to both sides, like, because I usually don't get cast as the darker side of things. So I like to play with those characters versus, you know, the lighter side, but I enjoy both because each has their benefits.
And it was cool, another long-standing series, so you'd be part of the Saint Seiya Rito.
Oh yes. So fun story with that. I actually booked Aphrodite while I was recording to Love Ru. We were on a break, and one of the directors, Shannon Reed, pulled me into audition for Aphrodite, and then I went in and I did another pass at the same auditions after getting some notes back, and then they're like, "Hey, can you stay for like 4 extra hours on my last day of recording when I was in Houston for the first half of To Love Ru?" And I was like, "Yeah," and so I did it, and so that was really cool to work on like not just like a new show, but also just to work on the original show.
Right.
Um, so I was really, really lucky to and grateful that I got to be part of like a legacy show like that. It's just so cool. Like I got to be in an 80s anime in like 2019. Like, yo,
Mhm.
that's pretty freaking cool. Um, and not only that, I got to play like one of the big bads of the arc, like the final hurdle before like the final boss. That's kind of cool too. And just get to do all the cheesy stuff where I got to yell like Piran and Rose and like yell out attack names and stuff like that was so cool. It was really, really cool. I was still a little green, so there's things I would have changed, slash I would have tried to keep a little bit more consistent when I was recording. I think what we turned out was pretty all right. And it's a voice that I don't really get to put on that often because I have to sound like I'm pretty. And I have
Mhm.
to really attempt to sound a little bit older too, even though Aphrodite is like only like 20 something. He's on the younger side, but that was a really cool show to be a part of and like totally unexpected. Like I was already insanely hyped about getting to record To Love Ru, and then I find out I get to be in freaking Saint Seiya.
Mhm.
Like, yo, I think he was also the first character that I had that had merch, like had actual merchandise. So I was like, oh my God, I have a character that has merch. I should buy some of it when I can afford it because Saint Seiya merch is expensive.
Yeah.
But that was a really cool project to be a part of. And hopefully, for that Saint Seiya like CG show, I don't know what's happening with it. I know there's probably going to be more. There should be more. But hopefully Aphrodite comes back in that because that'd be super cool to be a part of.
Was saving Skate to bring up last, so
Hell yeah. So the only thing with Skate was that Miya wasn't on the audition sides when we got the auditions for the show.
oh,
So I only ended up reading for Reki because we had pretty much everybody on there except for Miya. Out of the main cast that we knew about, we had Reki, Longa, Shadow, Cherry, Joe, Adam, and I don't think Tadashi was on there. No, it was just those six. And so I read for Reki, and I was like, oh, man, I don't I want to be this kid. The thing was Miya looked pretty androgynous in the poster. I was like, oh man, that'd be so cool to just like I don't know if that's a boy or a girl or like somebody like that I just want to be him because it'd be so much fun. And then I got like a 30-minute session. And I'm like 30 minutes. And they said, and I was like for Skate, and I was like, maybe I'll watch the episode because the episode was out at the time and subbed. Just to see if like I'm just gonna be some bits. I'm like, for 30 minutes, I don't think there's a couple bits here and there, but I was like, there's like nobody that justifies a 30-minute session. And then I got all my details for Source Connect, and they said and it said in the email that I was recording the PV. And I was like, whoa, promotional video. I'm a character? I'm like, I'm him, aren't I? And then we recorded that, and I was with Kyle Phillips, for my first session. He's like, yeah, you're playing this guy named Miya. We don't know if he's a guy or a girl. So if it's a girl, sorry. They'll be recast. I'm like, that's fine.
mhm.
You know, Miya was a boy / male identifying. I know the fan base likes to put a lot of headcanons out there for how Miya identifies and stuff like that. So we recorded that. We recorded the PV first, and me only had like one line in there that literally means nothing because that PV is just a whole bunch of different sentences and phrases that could mean this and that, and none of it actually showed up in the show. And then I was already invested in the show because I was like, okay, I'm cast to the show. I'm not gonna watch episode 3. I'll watch episode 4 because that was the most recent episode out at the time. And I was like, oh my God, this show's really good. The show's really, really good. I got invested after not knowing what happened in 3. We recorded 3. I was with Chris Waycamp, and I was like, that was like when Miya was like peak, like little, like I hate you kid. So like he was being little bastard, and I'm like, yes, let me harness this energy. I love this kid. It just was one hell of a ride from there. Skate was really, really something special, and Miya was I could talk for so long about Mia's little character arc and his journey, and like how much he means to me and how much the greater skate community has left an impact on me, just because they're a good bunch. A little crazy in some places, but well-meaning. Because I know skate TikTok in its prime was a place. As a whole, I'm eternally grateful that I got to be part of such a great show that I loved it bits and pieces and had an impact on so many different people's lives. And to get closer to people, like to get closer to my castmates and to some awesome people, and just have some really fun memories of that show. And some of the most fun I've had. And just to see the entire chemistry of the cast come together, who are literally perfect. Like that entire, I can't preach enough how perfect that entire cast is, quite literally. And in some respects, the skate dub kind of cemented its place in history a little bit with the bitches, bros, and non-binary hoes line that David put in there, which is just genius. It's so genius, and I love it so much. I made it my raid notification on Twitch, where I also stream. So every time it happens, I just hear David Wall go like, "Hey, bitches and bros and non-binary hoes," and I'm like, "Yo!" It's just too perfect not to have. Really, really thankful to have been a part of Skate. Miya was nothing but a pleasure, especially getting to go on that same journey as him and kind of pinpoint out specifically, like, hey, like, here's what's happening with him. I'm like, oh, I see this, and it clicking, and then getting to adjust to that and to see him like go from a loner to loving his friends, like, even though he's like kind of tsundere about it, he's like, I kind of like you, but I'm not going to outwardly say it. And just to make him feel like, yeah, he's a kid. He's allowed to feel these things because he's like 12, he's like 12, 13. He was something special. It was really, really something special. And I'll keep saying this forever. I couldn't be more thankful to have been a part of a show and to have such a genuinely great fan base and community in the fandom. I was helping out somebody at a convention. I was helping out a good friend of mine, and some fans recognized me, and they're like, "Hey, you're Rai, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's me." And they showed me the little keychain of me, and they're like, "Yeah, oh, we got it here." I'm like, "Oh my god, I would so love to go get it, but I'm working here." And I was like, "I have like some cash," and they're like, "Well, go buy it." I'm like, "Oh my god, would you have some cash here? Would you go buy it for me?" And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh dang, I only have this much." And they were even gonna offer to pay for the rest of it. I was like, no, you don't have to do that. It's fine. They're like, no, we'll do it. And unfortunately, that vendor closed up because it was the last day of the con. But they came back and then they gave me their Miya keychain. I was like, you're so sweet, because I don't have any merch of Miya. And I was like, that's so sweet of you. And it's like it's on my keys right now. So that alone just kind of shows like how sweet some of the people in this fandom are. And the fact to know that I've made an impact also just means a lot too. And then I've got to say some funny stuff as Miya too. So, but yeah, that's the end of my spiel.
It seems like I was just going to say, it seems like it's pretty similar to your regular voice.
For the most part, yeah. Miya kind of sits around usually where I normally speak, but I kind of push it up a little bit more. Because I usually talk in my head voice to begin with, for the most part in daily life. I just push him a little bit higher just because he needs to sound a little bit younger. So without pushing it too far. Because if I push it too hard, then it sounds like this. So which is not Miya in the slightest. It was funny. Sometimes I would wake up a little too late for my session. So I'd be like, okay, I need to throw it up. I need to wake this up. Because I can't if I have morning voice, I can't really hit the higher voices that easily, as goes for anybody, even if I am like naturally like higher pitched, because your voice isn't warmed up or awake yet. So I think I had like one session where I was like, oh damn, please. I needed like 30 more minutes, and I did not have 30 more minutes. So thankfully it turned out great, because Miya needed to be a little bit more emotional there. But so the voice crack I kind of put in there was totally justified. But otherwise, Miya's an easy role to kind of step into.
As the role initially on, like early on, was there a default line that you had to get into character with him right away?
Well, early on, since we didn't have a whole lot to go off of, because episode 2 was so minimal, because that's when he's introduced. He's introduced very briefly in 2 scenes, and and one scene in the middle of the episode, and then again at the end of the episode. And then episode 3 was like his big episode. I had like 3 hours to record that episode, and it was a big deal. Longest session I had for him too, because that's his episode. So that entire episode was kind of like my training grounds to kind of like find exactly where Miya is all the time. So there wasn't really a line per se that I would always go back to kind of help me get into character, because usually I'm able to step into the mindset of any character I play if I'm really in sync with them relatively easily. One of my favorites was sorry, this is hard to do if you're not talented. It's just such a throwaway line, but it's one of my favorites. And of course, a lot of people's favorite is like, practicing with losers is not a good look. Well, later, slime boy. That was one of my favorites too. It was pretty easy to step into, especially when we had to get to episode 6, where he's also just like peak little bastard, which is the best episode objectively, and nobody can tell me otherwise. Best speech episode in anime. Also, it's canon.
Yeah.
So, but I'm hoping there's more. I'm really hoping there's more good skate stuff, whether it be a movie or a second season. I hope it's just not an OVA, because I want us to dub it, and I want there to be more skate as much as the rest of the fandom does. So here's hoping next year we hear something from the skate team on that new animation project they announced.
And I know, of course, Damon and Jonah had answers for like what their favorite ship is, but did you have one too?
Well, my thing is, I ship the ships, except Miya. Miya does not deserve any ships.
Okay.
Miya gets shipped with therapy. He is 12 years old.
Yeah.
I ship the ships. I think they're cute. Matcha Blossom especially. That especially since like in the dub we made it more obvious. But I think Matcha Blossom is a fun ship. It's just got a lot of fun stuff there. And of course, Reki and Longa it's just like that ship is really cute too. I'm not one to really ship. I'm just like, they're just really good friends, but maybe they're kind of gay. Maybe they're bi. I'm getting mixed signals here, but I pretty much I ship the ships. That's why I always have to say, I'm like, yeah, no, like I ship the ships because it's fun. And like the show is knowing that the director of that show worked on Free, and they know how to make characters with really tight friendships like kind of seem gay. Or make it look pretty gay and is kind of gay. They knew what they were doing with this show, and I'm like, yeah, you guys are making it sound pretty gay from how you're animating this, especially with how they've updated some of the Blu-rays. I was keeping up with the updates that people were putting out on Twitter about like how like the changes in certain scenes, like the better animation and stuff like that, and I was like, oh, so what you're telling me is that they made it better.
Yeah.
So. And it actually really does do a huge difference.
It was interesting for me too, specifically because one of probably my single favorite series is Kenshin, and the lead character designer of Skate, Michinori Chiba. He's actually way back when he was one of the best animators to work on Kenshin. So he's
really
come a long way. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, that's always fun to see. One of my favorite kind of stories and similar to that is because I'm a huge Trigger fan. And I like dude, huge Trigger fan. Gurren Lagann's like my favorite show, as you can see behind me here. Giant poster of it. Like the entire story behind the crew that worked on like Gurren Lagann and like you know, some of the Gunbuster sequels, and how they became like made Trigger is just one of my, it's just, I love it so much, especially like Hideaki Anno's like early work on Gunbuster and stuff like that, and to see where he went, and like that as being like peak inspiration for some of the people that went on to make like Gurren Lagann, Promare, like Hiroyuki Imaishi's like big inspirations, as are I completely relate to that.
That was actually one thing I was gonna ask you was how do you think Gurren Lagann inspired you the most?
Oh, dude, that show came to me in the right time and the right place. Like I believe I was in middle school when I discovered it on Netflix for the first time, and I watched it, and I think that was the first time I cried watching a show. Was watching Gurren Lagann. Like I didn't just cry, I bawled. And that's just how invested I was. So that show like means the world to me. It's like one of my favorite pieces of media to exist. Like and I'm also very biased as a fan of the show, and also as like as somebody who works in the industry. I think the dub's perfect. Both from a script writing perspective and from a casting perspective. No offense to the original cast that would have done it with the Bandai visual dub. I'm sure they would have done a great job. But I'm sorry, everybody who was cast in the Aniplex dub of that show, chef's kiss, perfect. Nobody could ever replace them, in my eyes. And just that show, I want to do stuff like that. I want to be in like the roles like Simo, not just as a fulfillment to like my creative heart to be a part of a character that goes on a journey like him, but just to be in a show that's so cool, that just means so much to people and like has those big like anime moments. Like when you think of anime, you think of stuff that happens in Gurren Lagann, like giant robots with giant drills that go on to fight in freaking space and stand on literal galaxies and throw galaxies at people. Like that's insanely cool. Who cares if it makes 0 sense? It's anime, it's fiction. It's just so cool. So like I want to do stuff like that. Like I want to be able to yell like a huge attack name like that with my entire being and just that's the stuff I love to do and the stuff I crave and can only hope to do later on in my career. So I'm very, very hopeful that I can do stuff similar to that. If they ever did Gurren Lagann over again, I'd like if you don't get Yuri Lowenthal back, you're doing something wrong, unless Yuri's too busy. But yeah, so Gurren Lagann like means so much to me, and I go back and I rewatch it once a year, both as like my mantra, like it's the one thing I do every year. I rewatch Gurren Lagann, but also as like to remind me of like why I'm doing this and what I want to do in this industry.
The way that the final question I do for interviews is asking I think you probably can't answer, like you already have a good sense of what do you want your legacy to be? Kind of.
I want to be able to kind of leave my mark in a way. I don't want to just be vain, like I want to have a legacy because I should. No, I want to have a legacy because I want my work to mean something to people. I want my work to be able to touch people's hearts and to touch their souls and to help them out when they might not be in the best places mentally or in their lives, because that's what a lot of shows and actors did for me growing up. Even if they didn't know it, they helped me out through so much. Even if, I didn't associate the actors with the shows until much later. That's all I ever want to do, is to just make other people happier, to, help them along in some manner or form doing something that I love. And thankfully I found the great industry. I found that I want to be an actor, which I love doing, and acting can have a direct impact on that sort of stuff. More and more projects that are being created on, the yearly and daily basis that I can only hope to be able to be a part of, whichever ones I'm able to be a part of. Don't ever let your dreams just be dreams. You got to at least try for them. I wasn't in the best part of my life when I pursued my dreams, and should I have moved with $1,000 to my name? Probably not. But if I didn't make that move when I did, I would not have the career and blessings that I have today, nor the mentality of the me in this moment right now, or the friends I've made, or probably even my girlfriend. So, you gotta at least try once at your dreams, especially if you really care about them. And I did, and I'm only just trying to keep it up.
Well, thanks. I'm glad that we got to be your first in-depth interview.
Yeah, no worries, dude. I appreciate you reaching out. It was really a pleasant surprise to kind of see like the email. I was like, an interview? Hell yeah. So yeah, no, it's an absolute pleasure to talk with you, dude.
Yeah, you're actually my 100th.
Oh, I'm your 100th? Yo, that's kind of an honor. Thanks, dude.
Yeah. And I'm doing Aaron Campbell tomorrow.
Oh, dude, Aaron's really cool. Hell yeah. Hell yeah, hell yeah, hell yeah. Tell Aaron I say what's up.
Okay. And once I get this up too, I can, of course, send it to you.
Sure. Yeah, feel free to just email it to me and I'll plug it as best I can, my dude.
Thanks.
Of course, man.
See ya.
Yeah, see you later. Peace.